Once upon a time, in the bustling world of the ancient Mediterranean, there lived a princess named Jezebel from Sidon, a city renowned for its wealth, culture, and influence. Sidon was a powerful city by the sea, its harbours filled with ships and its markets alive with traders from distant lands. Her father, King Ahab, was not only the ruler, but also the high priest of Baal, holding both political and spiritual authority over his people. Jezebel grew up surrounded by the rituals and mysteries of the Phoenician gods, especially Baal and Asherah, deities believed to control the rain, the harvest and the very fate of the land. She believed in them with unwavering conviction, her faith shaped by the grandeur of Sidon's temples and the devotion of its people. When a political marriage was arranged, Jezebel was chosen to wed Ahab, the king of Israel, a land with customs and beliefs very different from her own. Leaving behind her homeland, Jezebel journeyed across foreign landscapes, bringing with her not just her royal status, but also her faith, her traditions, and the expectations of her people. The Israelites, fiercely devoted to Yahweh, watched the arrival of this foreign queen with suspicion and unease, uncertain of what changes she might bring. Jezebel, however, was bold and confident, determined not to be a passive figure in her new home, but to shape it according to her vision. She looked out over Israel and saw a land she believed could be transformed by the power of her gods and her influence. Her marriage to Ahab was more than a union of two royal houses. It was the beginning of a dramatic cultural and spiritual clash that would shake the nation. Jezebel was not content to remain in the background or simply play the role of a foreign bride. She intended to change the nation, starting with its king, and soon her influence would be felt throughout the royal court and beyond. The people of Israel whispered among themselves, wondering what this bold queen's arrival would mean for their faith, their traditions, and their future. King Ahab welcomed Jezebel with open arms, unaware of the storm of change and conflict she would soon bring to his kingdom. From the moment she set foot in Samaria's palace, the stage was set for a confrontation that would echo through generations. Jezebel's rise to power would test Israel's faith and unity like never before, challenging the very heart of its identity. The story of a queen who would challenge a nation and forever alter its destiny had just begun. Israel would never be the same after Jezebel's arrival, as the land itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. The shadow of Jezebel had fallen, and a new chapter in Israel's story was about to unfold. King Ahab, eager to please Jezebel, began to drift from Israel's God. Jezebel's influence was immediate and public. She convinced Ahab to build a grand temple for Baal in Samaria, complete with an altar and an Asherah pole. This was a direct challenge to Israel's faith. Jezebel promoted Baal worship as the new state religion. The people were divided, some drawn to the spectacle, others horrified by the betrayal of Yahweh. Jezebel's will dominated the palace and the kingdom. Ahab lost himself in her vision, provoking God's anger more than any king before him. Jezebel was the true power behind the throne, reshaping Israel's destiny. Her reign was just beginning, and the nation's soul hung in the balance. The queen's shadow grew longer with every passing day. Israel was changing, and not for the better. Jezebel wanted more than temples. She wanted to erase Yahweh's worship entirely. She launched a brutal campaign against the prophets of the Lord, hunting them down and killing many. Fear swept the land. Survivors hid in caves, aided by a few brave souls like Obadiah. Jezebel imported hundreds of Baal and Asherah prophets, feeding them at her royal table. Baal worship flourished openly, while Yahweh's followers went underground. The kingdom was transformed. Idolatry celebrated, faithfulness punished. The people faced a choice: follow the queen's new order or risk everything for their ancestral god. Jezebel demanded not just loyalty, but spiritual surrender. Her name became a symbol of persecution and wickedness. Israel was at war with itself, torn between two faiths. Jezebel's grip was ruthless and unyielding. The old ways were nearly extinguished. The queen's spiritual conquest seemed complete, but resistance still smoldered in the shadows. In Israel's darkest hour, a prophet named Elijah appeared, stepping out of obscurity and into the heart of a nation in crisis. The land was gripped by fear and uncertainty as the people turned to false gods for hope. He confronted King Ahab with a bold proclamation: "There will be no rain except at my word." It was a direct challenge to the king's authority and the nation's faith in Baal, the so-called storm god. The drought began, devastating the land and exposing Baal's impotence. Crops withered, rivers dried up, and hope faded with every cloudless day. For 3 long years, famine reigned, proof that Yahweh, not Baal, controlled the skies. Hunger gnawed at every household, and desperation grew. Jezebel, the powerful queen, blamed Elijah for the nation's suffering, making him her greatest enemy and vowing revenge. She hunted him relentlessly, sending soldiers and spies, but God kept Elijah hidden, sheltering him in the wilderness and providing for his needs. The queen's fury grew, blind to her own role in the nation's suffering. Her pride and anger only deepened the crisis. The conflict became personal: Jezebel versus Elijah, Baal versus Yahweh. It was a battle of wills, faith, and destiny. The famine set the stage for a final dramatic showdown. All eyes turned to the mountains, waiting for a miracle. The people suffered, caught between a vengeful queen and a defiant prophet. Their faith was tested as never before. The stakes were cosmic, a battle for Israel's soul, for the very future of the nation and its people. Jezebel wielded royal power. Elijah stood alone with God. The tension was unbearable. Something had to give, and soon. The nation waited for a sign, longing for hope, for rain, for deliverance from their suffering. The queen and the prophet were on a collision course, their destinies intertwined, their confrontation inevitable. The outcome would change everything, shaping the faith and future of a nation for generations to come. Jezebel's cruelty extended beyond religion. When King Ahab coveted Naboth's vineyard, Naboth refused to sell, honoring God's law. Ahab sulked, powerless to get his way. Jezebel took charge, mocking her husband's weakness. She forged letters in Ahab's name, orchestrating a false trial. Naboth was falsely accused and executed. His vineyard was seized, stained with innocent blood. Jezebel's ruthlessness knew no bounds. She destroyed anyone in her path. The queen's power was absolute, her conscience absent. This act of injustice shocked the nation. Jezebel's legacy was now one of murder as well as idolatry. The king's weakness and the queen's ambition proved a deadly combination. The land cried out for justice. The prophet's warnings grew louder. Judgment was coming. After years of relentless drought and suffering, Elijah boldly challenged King Ahab and Jezebel's prophets to a dramatic contest on the heights of Mount Carmel, a place known for its ancient significance. All of Israel gathered, anxious and curious, to witness this extraordinary confrontation that would decide the fate of their nation. Elijah stood alone, unwavering, facing 450 prophets of Baal and the entire royal establishment. He called out to the people, "How long will you waver between 2 opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal is God, follow him." The crowd was silent, torn between fear and hope, as Elijah's words echoed across the mountain. The test was set. Each side would prepare a sacrifice. No fire would be set, and the true God would answer by sending fire from heaven. Baal's prophets prayed, chanted, and danced with wild abandon, desperate for a sign. They even cut themselves with swords and spears, their cries growing frantic. But no answer came, only silence. Then Elijah rebuilt the Lord's ancient altar, drenched the sacrifice and wood with water until it overflowed, and prayed with quiet confidence. Instantly, fire blazed down from heaven, consuming the sacrifice in a flash of divine power, burning up the wood, the stones, and even the water in the trench around the altar. The people fell on their faces, overwhelmed. "The Lord, he is God," they cried. At Elijah's command, the prophets of Baal were seized and executed, ending their false ministry in a single decisive moment. Jezebel's religious order was shattered in a single day, her power shaken to its core. The power of Yahweh was undeniable. Jezebel's defeat was total, her gods exposed as powerless, but her rage only grew, fueling her desire for revenge. The queen's grip on Israel was slipping, her authority undermined by the miracle everyone had witnessed. The people had seen the truth with their own eyes. The tide was turning, and hope was stirring in their hearts. Elijah's God had answered with fire, while Jezebel's gods remained silent and powerless. The nation trembled at the overwhelming display of divine power, forever changed by what they had witnessed. Yet the battle for Israel's soul was far from over. The struggle between truth and deception would continue. Mount Carmel's victory marked a turning point. Jezebel, furious at Elijah, threatened his life. Even after witnessing God's power, her heart remained hard. Elijah fled, exhausted and afraid, proof of Jezebel's fearsome reputation. Meanwhile, Ahab's reign ended in blood. In battle, a random arrow struck him down, fulfilling Elijah's prophecy. Dogs licked up Ahab's blood where Naboth had died. The king who enabled Jezebel's evil was gone. Jezebel, now a widow, faced a kingdom in turmoil. Her power was vulnerable, her enemies were closing in. The winds of change swept through Israel. Judgment had come for Ahab. Jezebel's time was running out, the queen's end was near. Years after Ahab's death, God raised up Jehu to finish the judgment. Jehu stormed toward Jezreel, killing Jezebel's son and seizing power. Jezebel, defiant to the end, painted her eyes and faced Jehu from her window. She hurled insults, refusing to beg for mercy. Her pride remained unbroken even as her world collapsed. Jehu called for allies. Palace servants threw Jezebel from the window. Her blood stained the walls, her body trampled by horses. The queen's reign ended in violence and humiliation. Jezebel's final act was one of defiance, but her power was gone. Jehu ordered Jezebel's burial, but dogs had devoured her remains, fulfilling Elijah's prophecy. All that was left were her skull, feet and hands. The once mighty queen was reduced to nothing, her legacy written in blood and dust. Jezebel's name became a warning, a symbol of wickedness and defiance against God. Her story echoes through history as a lesson in the dangers of pride and idolatry. No human power can stand against divine justice. Jezebel's rise ended in utter ruin. Her legacy is a timeless reminder, the triumph of God's will over human arrogance.